The world's gonna hear, 'cause I'm gonna shine. And I will be dancing when circumstances drown the music out. Say I won't, not enough is what I've been told. But it must be a lie, 'cause the spirit inside says I'm so much more. So let them say what they want. Oh, I dare them to try. I'm gonna run. No, I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna know what it means to live. Will I just be alive? The world's gonna hear. Hello, this is Leader with Navia. Today I have a very special guest. Oh, two guests now. You will tell me the name of the cat in a while.
Meet Archie.
Wow, what a beautiful cat.
Sorry about that.
So this is Leader with Navia, the episode, the program 146 and the fifth program of this new season, the third season. I just began 2 weeks ago, and until the end of February, we're only going to have global leaders, all the conversations in English. And today I have this lady there. You already know who she is, the corporate person, Amelia Fox. So I won't talk about the corporate Amelia. I will talk about the mom. She's the mom of a 13-year-old boy. She will probably talk about him as well. She has a cat. I didn't know that. She loves cooking. She told me she loves cooking, also fishing, and she, besides all the corporate career and experience, large experience that she has been doing a great and inspiring job on giving back to society everything that she has already had, with all the privileges that we know we all have. And she's doing an amazing voluntary work that she will share with us. And so only for this, I already thank you, Amelia, because I think that we all should start giving back to society everything that we got so far. So welcome to Leader with Navia. It's a pleasure having you here with us today. And please tell us your story, everything that I didn't tell yet.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here with you. Like I said, I can't wait to meet you in person at some point, but this is a lovely time. You did hit some of the highlights of my life, but I do feel like, I sort of have a full circle experience. I grew up in rural Georgia, a pretty small town. My parents were tremendous and sacrificed a lot for my sister and I to be able to go to a good school, which set me up, I think, for a lot of success in life. My dad worked hard, taught me the value of that, and was also a risk taker and starting some new businesses on his own. And I think I got a little bit of that DNA. So I've tried a lot of new things in my life. I started my career out of college in social services, thinking I was going to work. I worked with in a residential treatment center, and I worked with homeless kids in DC, and I was on the path to get a PhD and become a psychologist. And I had, thankfully, a mentor supervisor who was pretty honest with me. And he sat me down one day and said that I would be a good therapist, but I would not be a great one, which I think was his way of really saying I wouldn't be good at all. But he did it nicely, and that helped. And it kind of let me reset and look around and think, how can I stay in this field and give back? And that's when business school became a real possibility. And I was fortunate to be invited to and then accepted at the School of Management at Yale, which was a fascinating place because in addition to the private sector focus, they had a nonprofit and public sector focus as well. So I wasn't a complete fish out of water with all the folks coming up from Wall Street, given my background. And that experience really set me up to move into the corporate world, where I stayed for about 20 years. In the sense of learning business, learning the structures and the systems. I was so fortunate. I did some groundbreaking work in customer relationship management in a large national bank. I was head of direct marketing for a .com or an internet startup in the .com boom. We were not one of the ones that made it, but it was still a really good experience. And then I spent about 11 years in consulting, working with large companies, Amex, Roche Pharmaceuticals, Merit Vacation Club, and then a host of smaller companies as well, doing a lot of work in the marketing space and the CRM space, and then moving into the strategic planning arena as well. And that's where kind of in my career, I really began seeing sort of some of what we'll talk about today, but some of the gender issues and racial issues became much more apparent to me. I mean, when you're a consultant and you get on the plane Monday morning and first class is filled up with white men in business suits, it's pretty telling. And there was a lot I learned about that, a lot of experiences I had through that. As you said, I'm a mom, and so that's a big piece. After several years of sort of undiagnosed infertility, I adopted my son. We adopted our son from Kazakhstan, and so I got to spend 2 months in Kazakhstan in 2009 in the dead of winter, which was super, super cold. But it was really nice to kind of have that experience and have a blended family. And from there, the getting on the plane Monday morning was not so appealing anymore. And had the opportunity to move into a strategic planning job at a large payments company where I ran sort of global strategic planning and built a team and had a really nice experience with that. But something was sort of missing, right? I still was looking for what's that piece for me. And I joined a nonprofit. We were in the ed tech space. We were at a sort of a startup entity that was aimed at closing the achievement gap in school systems, in the public school systems particularly. And that was kind of a second awakening for me, because I began to really understand and see the disparities in education and the disparities in communities and the impact that had, and ways that our technology could help address that. We were working with McKinsey. We were working with some other big consulting firms on trying to really dig into, the social issues and the societal issues and the systemic issues and address them. Unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, which is a whole nother podcast for us to talk about, that company didn't make it. I did a little bit of work on my own after that, and was in a point where I was really sort of praying for what's next. And next thing I know, I get a recruiter calls, and I'm talking to folks at Lutheran Services Florida down here. And so that the full circle piece of it, if you look at my essays going into grad school, it was to come into a nonprofit and use this business experience. And that's exactly what I was able to do 20 years later. So you couldn't have predicted it more perfectly, but it really did kind of close the circle for me. So 5.5 years later, I'm still here in Tampa working with LSF and continuing to dig into, ways that our work lives can change and things we can do. I'm involved with an organization in Kazakhstan that works with children and mothers who are in rough situations. I'm involved with another organization that supports an orphanage in Eswatini, as well as some others around the world. So I do try to stay connected to that space. And like you said, I have had a lot of privilege and a lot of success and a lot of fortune in my way. And so I want to use the talents that I have to the best that I can and help other people.
What an inspiring story, Amelia. Thank you for sharing. And how do you define your purpose right now?
That's like a deceptively difficult question, right?
I know. That's why I begin with it.
You start with a hard one. Can't you talk about what I'd like to do when I grow up? The purpose is, if I think back on my life, I've always tried to make things better. Like, that's kind of what I do. I come in, I'm a problem solver, I'm incredibly analytical. And, when my world sort of pre-consulting, and especially the world in consulting, where I was able to help organizations solve a problem. That's why they bring a consultant in. So I really honed that. And I think of that, I use that in my work now, in my nonprofit work, and my volunteer work, in all parts of my life. So I think that's a big part of what I do. But to be honest and to define my purpose, I am as faith-based person, I feel like my purpose is to go where I'm led and to use those talents and to use them to the best of my abilities. But really, my purpose is to go where God leads me and to try and listen and be attuned to that, and use that to drive the work that I do.
Perfect. And how does your job right now helps you put your purpose in practice? So tell us a little more about what you do at Lutheran Services.
So I have the kitchen sink. I am the Chief Strategy Officer and Chief of Staff at Lutheran Services, but what that means is I sort of catch everything that's not in another group. I spend a lot of time in the marketing and communications space. I spend a lot of time in our development space, and a lot of time in our project management and QA space as well. The reason that I joined Lutheran Services, so we were about a $30 million nonprofit for several decades. And over the course of a couple of years, we grew to about 250 million. This was right before I came. So for those of you in business, that hockey stick growth is pretty appealing. But you also know that it comes with a lot of sort of maturity gaps, right? I mean, how you manage and make decisions in a company that's 30 million and you can know everybody, to one that now, we're now closer to 300 and close to 1,400 employees across the state, serving hundreds of thousands of people a year. The systems that we need, the processes that we need, the approach that we need is got to be more mature. So really, my job is to make that better. So I get to sort of poke around and help people and help our leaders do that and find places where we've got weak spots and go and sort of fix those and help hone that. So I get to do it every day. I get to make things a little better every day. And, by doing that, I get to help the people on the front lines, hopefully help make their jobs easier, because they're the ones that are really out there serving people and doing the hard work.
For sure. And how do you define your leadership style, Amelia?
That I actually asked one of my teammates about that today, because I was kind of curious if what I was thinking he agreed with, and he did. I typically just cast a very broad vision, and then I come alongside whoever I'm working with and help achieve that vision, right? Help execute it. It's more of a teammate. I work hard to make sure that I'm authentic and that I'm showing up my true self every day, and that I'm vulnerable and that I'm open with them. I don't succeed at it all the time, but that is my aim. And I really work to be sure that I'm encouraging and empowering those that I work with. And so I'm able to see that. One of the ways that I do it is to really encourage risk-taking and encourage mistakes and encourage out-of-the-box thinking. If we're not making mistakes, then I don't think we're trying hard enough. And so we celebrate those mistakes, right? And it's that sort of that mentality of we're the tip of the spear. We are helping grow the organization. So, let's be out there and challenge the status quo.
Sure. So I won't ask you about mistakes because you already answered my question.
Well, I got plenty to talk about.
But I have a different question. Was it hard for you to move from a corporate business executive of private companies to a nonprofit organization? Was it challenging?
Is it challenging now?
It is.
Even 5.5 years later, I don't think I could put it in the past tense. It is challenging. LSF is essentially government funded, and the vast bulk of our funding comes from government funding. And so, we operate on incredibly slim margins with incredibly high regulations and expectations. And that situation, it's easy to come in, and I think I did this a little bit. You come in thinking, I'm going to take these business concepts and I'm going to put them in this nonprofit, and it's going to be so much better. And even though you sort of know that won't work, you still kind of try to do it right. And so I've learned a lot through that it's, there are absolutely concepts and ideas and structures that I can bring from my time in the corporate world to the nonprofit space. It's finding out how to really fit them into the nonprofit space that's been fun, right? And that's been the challenge and the exciting part of it, because it makes everything better as we go through it. But it's hard. I mean, it is hard. It's a different way of working. It's a different set of expectations. There's more limits. Your customers, your marketing is different. Your customers are different. Your funders are different. So it's some different language. But at the core, we're still people working together. And so getting people to work together and head toward the same mission and row in the same boat, some of that doesn't. Some of that is a pretty easy transition.
Yeah, I like when you talk about language, because I always ask about communications, because just like you, I have a very solid communications background, and it still bothers me that leaders don't see communication as a leadership ability, skill, essential. So my question to you, although I know that you have this background, was it a skill that you have developed from the very beginning? How was your skill development of communications through your career?
That's an interesting question. I have a couple of things that jump to mind on that. When I was first working in social services between college and grad school, we ran group therapy sessions daily. And so I learned so much there about building teams and helping draw out people who weren't talking or had ideas, and helping redirect people who might be a little bit over talking. And so that skill I learned, and it really served me well when I got into sort of the business world. And it was an interesting shift over. The other piece that I learned, and this was in my first job out of business school, when I was doing my exit conversations, one of the things that I think she was actually my boss's boss at the time, an executive woman at the bank, told me that I really needed to develop my influencing skills. And I was like, I don't know what you mean. Like I did my work and I did a great job, and we succeeded in this project. But really thinking about that and letting that settle in, particularly when I went into the consulting space, I was able to intentionally focus on that, right? And understanding how to bring people along and what the change management concepts mean at the core, in terms of how to talk to different people, get different ideas, be open to new ideas, and not just necessarily drive an agenda through, but gather input and information and let that form your agenda, or let that form your solution to the problem. So I think, those two experiences jump out at me. And then it certainly has been a lifetime of continuing to improve, and still to this day, working, particularly when you begin having the harder conversations and the awkward conversations and the difficult conversations, practicing those and thinking about them and learning from them every single day.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's a never-ending journey.
Right.
Yeah. Amelia, how about trust? How do you develop trust among your relationships, your teams, and how do you connect trust with diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging?
And belonging. That's the word that I think I really want to go to. But I think the way that I look at developing trust is first of all, just showing up, right? It's showing up and it's being there. And it's admitting when you do something wrong. It's apologizing when you offend somebody. It's recognizing that you're not always perfect in that relationship, and you're not going to be, but that doesn't mean there's not trust, but as long as you can talk about it. So to me, I think that consistency in showing up and that consistency in being there is important. I think another piece that's important, the way I look at it, is kind of going outside your comfort zone, or if you're at work, going outside your job description, right? If somebody needs help and you can help them, then help them. right?
Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it, right? This sort of, it's not my role, doesn't really help build trust. And so I think those to me are the two pieces that I really try to lean on to develop relationships that are trusting and strong.
And how about the connection?
The connection to the DEI. That, that's where having the hard conversations comes in, right? And so, as you're developing trust, that vulnerability that you have to have in order to say, "Ooh, I made a mistake here. Oh, I didn't handle that right. Or could I have handled that better? Give me some feedback," right? And eliciting that feedback from a variety of people who don't look and act like me, right? I can get great feedback from the people who look and act like me and have a similar background. But that's not going to really help me, right? Because it's going to be through the same lens, basically.
Yeah.
So, I think as we peel back in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, journey, peeling back that willingness and openness to have conversations with people outside your comfort zone, right? And outside of that, it's crucial. And being vulnerable and showing up and being honest. There's times where I'll say to people that I work with and talk to and friends of mine that I didn't know A, B, and C, or I didn't understand that, and tell me more. And then it's the same way, right? I get asked those questions as well. So I think that piece of it, that if we can't have an environment where we begin to truly, honestly believe that we have each other's best interest at heart, then that belonging space is going to be hard to achieve.
Perfect. And we have been talking a lot about vulnerability, but it's still hard for the majority of leaders to really be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's so hard for us to show up, as you say?
I think sort of two reasons. One, I think it's hard to even define what vulnerability means, right? I mean, we grew up in this environment, in this culture, at least here in the U.S., that's, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and wipe the frown off your face, put a smile on, work hard and you'll succeed. And that doesn't lend itself to having the conversation of, I don't understand this, or I'm not sure I get that part, or can you help me in that part, right? And so, with decades and decades of that, it's hard to even know what it means to be vulnerable. So I think that's a piece of it. And then I think the other piece of it is because there's decades and decades of this sort of other approach, that it's scary, right? It's scary to not have the answer, or not, not be the one that came up with the idea, and not be the one that brought the sale to fruition, or whatever it is that you're doing. And so to share in that spotlight, or to share in those concepts is hard for people, because they feel like that's going to take away from my cat really likes to come when I talk. It's going to take away from their success and their reputation, rather than add to that to their reputation.
Yeah. We have a very similar environment here. We were trained, at least my generation and the previous generations, to occupy a space at the top of the company, and leadership was almost a physical place. It was, and we should be there and reach the top, and we should have all the answers and know everything, and it's impossible.
Particularly in this world where it's global and the communication is coming at 90 miles a minute and things are changing. You can't have it all.
It's completely impossible, and it's hard for at least old school leaders, to kind of unlearn this and relearn something that it's needed, and it's what's going to make us evolve. So it's hard. It's hard. And Amelia, in your opinion, what is the biggest challenge that we face, at companies, to really promote an inclusive environment, an inclusive company? Because we have been talking a lot. I know that in the US, you are years ahead of us in Brazil. This conversation about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging here, it's 5 to 10 years long, no more than this. I know that in the US, because I've worked for GE, for J&J, I know it's very, very previous, the conversation. But here in Brazil, we talk a lot, and we still don't see the leaders walking the talk. Mm-hmm. So what is the biggest challenge, in your opinion, for us to really have inclusive workplaces?
It's guys, it's hard because I think there's a lot of them. I think my perspective is that we're still dealing with, even here in a lot of companies, pretty antiquated systems around how we measure performance and how we measure success, how we do the performance reviews, for example. I mean, I can get pretty tactical in that space. That structure, right? That sort of meritocracy, for that idea of, you do A, B, and C, and you get promoted, based on your skills and what you do. And the way the whole sort of annual review process is, which it still boggles my mind that we still do that. I think that holds us back so much, because these are old structures that fit companies that were sort of decades ago. And in this space and environment, we're global. We've got multiple generations in the workforce. We've got multiple experiences, life experiences, lived experiences, all of the diversity angles, right? I don't even want to try to say them all. I'll miss something, right? But all of that, trying to allow that to come to the table and allow people to come to work as they are and who they are, and not have to hide something about their background or their experience or their perspectives or their orientations. When we ask them to hide that, then they can't be as effective, because they're spending energy doing something else. Yeah. And so I think you take those two things and sort of combine them. Our structures don't allow for it, and our culture doesn't allow for it. And so the DEIB conversations, at a big picture, it's a challenge, particularly for big companies who have so much history and structure and have to have a way to pay people and measure people and manage all the litigations and these pieces of it. And I think it's scary, right? It's scary to think about what's the other side look like. If we dump all of this, where do we go? What does it look like, and how do we run our businesses? I think the businesses who take those risks and try new things and fail at some and succeed at some are going to be the ones that will succeed in the long term, because the world is shifting, right? The demographics are shifting, the dynamics are shifting. And if we don't embrace that, the old structures are going to really become more of a hindrance than they are today, I think, even. So I hope that makes sense, but it's kind of
it makes total sense to me. Yeah, I love the way you framed it, because I've been talking about a lot about this that meritocracy piece. It's something utopic. It doesn't work at all. Right. Meritocracy, I always say that it's something that works for white, straight, privileged men with no visible disabilities. It works for them.
That's great.
Not for all the other rest of the population. Right. And also I totally agree that the way we measure people, measure success, the way we still evaluate people and promote people, it's so it's full of biases. So right. We have a lot of work.
Right. We have a lot of work
ahead of us.
We have a lot of work, and we have to just tackle it small win at a time. I think just finding and celebrating the little wins and just changing the system from the ground up. At least that's the part I can play.
That's it. I totally agree with you. And my next question is, from your perspective, from your point of view in the US, what is the biggest problem when we think about including minorities? We know we are not minorities. Women are not minorities.
Right.
Black people here in Brazil, it's 56% of population. So it's not a minority group, but we are not, we are underrepresented in the corporate world, in the workforce. From your perspective, what is the group that has the biggest challenge when you think about the US environment?
I don't know how database this answer is, but let me. So this morning I read a statistic. You may have seen this already, but in the last month, 1 million men entered the labor force in the U.S. and 39,000 women did. 1 million men and 39,000, right? That's a massive gap. And so as I look at that, I mean, I think there are lots of groups that have big challenges, but if I kind of break that down, my sort of off gut answer I'll say is that I think African American women probably have the hardest challenge in the U.S. They've got kind of a double whammy, right? Being a woman and being African American, and in a lot of places there's so many other societal and cultural things that have held them back for a variety of reasons. And I think this is a piece that I've had a lot of conversations with friends and coworkers about over the last 2-3 years, but it's so hard for that group to be seen and to be respected and to be honored and for their contributions and their knowledge and their experience. So I feel like that's the biggest group that has challenges. I think there are probably other groups that are maybe smaller groups that have bigger challenges, but that's a big group of people that we're really missing out on.
Yeah, we have the same scenario here. The Black women here are in the basis of our pyramid. Right. So they have the hugest challenges right. all the time. I
mean, you see it at a lot of companies you're in, right? I mean, particularly in the social services space, a lot of the frontline employees are African American women. As you go up the chain, it becomes, whiter and whiter and more male. In nonprofit space, it happens in, the big any space with the big frontline service workers. And I think that's something we've got to figure out how to address and how to create opportunities for growth and change and movement.
Now I would like to ask you a more very personal question. So feel free to answer. What is the role that maternity plays to your life right now? And how was this journey? Because I know that when you have this undefined diagnosis that you won't be able to generate your own kid, so it's really tough. I have friends going through this, and it takes a long time. So you decided to adopt in Kazakhstan, so it's something so unique that if you could share with us your story, it would be great.
I can. So I was a little bit older in life when we got to that point, which was really nice because I had already worked a lot of years, right? And all my friends that had kids, I mean, they've got kids who are married now and they're almost grandmothers now. So, I mean, I'm kind of, off cycle from that. But because of that, and because I had been around so many working women working mothers, I had so much insight, right, into what they regretted or what they wish they had done differently, or, how they thought about, being a working mom. So it let me go into this, with a lot more knowledge than I would have if I had been 25 years old at the time. It was hard when you start looking at their options for, creating a family in a non-traditional way. It's pretty easy to cut off some big chunks, right? Big tree branches fairly quickly. And when we made the decision to adopt internationally versus US, the world actually sort of shrunk fairly fast. And we ended up in Kazakhstan, which, created a blended family. Noah is Kazakh. He looks like he's like from Genghis Khan, right? I mean, he's got an Aleutian look to him. And so, if you see me and him, we clearly don't have the same DNA. And, so what does that mean? And how do I raise a child, in a blended environment? And with the trauma and the angst that just comes with adoption, right? It comes with it, like it or not. He's gonna have a hole in his heart. So how do we work through those issues? So that's been kind of a big piece of my work, and why I stay connected to the adoptive community, why I stay connected to families from Kazakhstan, who have similar blended families. So it plays a big role in my life, and it really, it was funny. One of the things that it changed for me from a working perspective is pre-Noah, I'd have bosses and leaders tell me, I need to learn to delegate more, delegate more. And I was like, I'm delegating. Post-Noah, I got it overnight, right? Like, I don't have to be in every decision because I got to get home and pick him up from daycare. Like, the workaholic sort of went away, and being there to be with him was crucial. And, it is a balance. Being a working mom is, for me personally, it's a real balance. It's a real struggle. I feel like I have missed out on things in his life. I've missed out on being home every afternoon to help him with his homework. But I've also shown him that you can have a strong woman in your life, right? Who does provide and works and leads and does some neat things. And so I know he's learning good things from it, while I feel like I'm missing out on it. And I know you might ask me about pandemic stuff later, but one of the things that has been so nice for me, and you can tell I'm working from my home office, and that's a picture of him with this side a long time ago. He's much older than that now. But, I've been able to be home when he gets home from school. And so even if it's just a quick, greeting at the door, but I can give him a hug. How was your day? Did you get a good lunch? Go take your bath. Let's jump into homework. Like, that connectivity has been really powerful and kind of allowed me to better blend and better balance, working and motherhood. But he's become the priority in my life, at least for the next years until he gets into college and becomes an adult, and then maybe I can shift a little. But
a few more years. I have two daughters. One is 18 and the other one is 16. And here in Brazil, they don't move for college. They stay home.
They stay home.
Yeah.
You know the feeling.
And why Kazakhstan?
Well, interesting, and really interesting given kind of what's going on right now. But there are a lot of countries you couldn't adopt from because you had to have heritage, or I was too old to adopt from some of the countries. And there's all kinds of reasons. China and Asia was really kind of shutting down and taking a long time. So there were just kind of a lot of countries we could cut out pretty quickly. And it actually came down to Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Russia. Kind of an interesting mix given what's going on right now in the world. Ukraine had some restrictions on adoption that just didn't work with me timeline-wise. It was going to take too long. And Russia at the time felt very risky, and I was too worried that something would go wrong with the adoption.
Yeah.
And so, and Kazakhstan is known for its baby houses, right? It's known for having good quality care at the baby houses. Now it's still an orphanage, but where he was, I mean, there were 9 doctors that worked in that building. He had great care. His caregivers really loved him and cared for him, and they were in small groups. And so it was a place where I felt like he had been loved, because he was 10 months old by the time we brought him home. So he spent the first 10 months of his life, and that time is so critical.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why we landed on Kazakhstan. And it was really interesting to be in a country where not only could I not speak the language, I couldn't even read the language. I mean, everything was different. And so it was a real cultural experience to be there. And I'm so glad we had that time, because we've been able to bring that back. And we still, every year, we'll celebrate the day that we met, and we'll celebrate the day that we became a family. And I'll make a Kazakh meal, and
wow,
Kazakh things. And so we've been able to carry that culture through, and and celebrate it with cakes and cookies and, and talking about it with him. So that it's a piece that's just become part of who we are and part of my whole family. I mean, we did a blog when we were over there, and we had people following us who we didn't even know. I mean, so many people were on this journey with us, and really brought Noah right into the family. And I mean, I can't thank my family and friends enough for talk about inclusion. I mean, he was like, he's it. He's it.
Yeah.
If I could take that and put that in companies, man, we if I could bottle that secret sauce, we'd be in good shape.
What a great learning journey. Yeah. And do you ever face prejudice because you have a blended family and an adopted kid from Kazakhstan?
I don't feel like we have. I mean, I've certainly had people ask me questions and, oh, he's not yours, and some questions like that. And I know that sometimes those may be stemming from prejudice. I felt like, and I just really took the lens that when people ask questions, whatever lens they were coming from, they were interested in the story. And so I really looked at it from that side of it. And sometimes it's hard to ask the question. I mean, I got all the, how much did he cost and all the annoying questions you could imagine. But I know it was really generally from people who cared and just were curious, because it is unique and it is different and it doesn't happen every day. And so I think, that side of it, we have it. I will say when COVID first came out, kind of in that first 6-8 months, I was worried that he would face some comments at school because of sort of the Asian backlash. And he did a couple of comments here and there, nothing big, nothing widespread, nothing that required, a major sit down. But, it was a place and a time to really talk to him about, listening, but, being aware that people are going to react in some ways that he can't control. And how does he face that? And he's a 13-year-old boy. I mean, they're mean to each other. So they find
they're mean to each other.
Yeah. So they're going to find something to tease him about, and he's going to find something to tease his friends about. And, so some of it is just normal 13-year-old boy. But those are sort of the two places where I've seen a little bit of it.
Yeah, I asked you that because my youngest brother, he's a doctor there in the US, and he has a blended family because he's Brazilian and his wife is American. She's a white, blonde, green hair woman, but her family is from Pakistan.
Oh,
her mom, her aunt, her grandfather, grandmother, her. So they were all from Pakistan, and she looks like her father that is American. But my niece, she's now about to be 16 years old. She's like a Pakistan girl. She's just like her grandmother. And sometimes people ask my sister-in-law if she is the mom or if she's the nanny or something else, because they are so different. And they face this a lot. That's why I asked you. And I see today my niece. She's kind of upset because she's the only tanned girl at school. The other one are all blonde, white, very white.
Yeah, that gets hard. I mean, I've been lucky in that the schools Noah has gone to, somewhat intentionally on my part, are pretty diverse. And I was with him the other day, and we were doing something at the school, and I watched him walking around. And of the 4 guys he was walking, it was 3 friends and him. They were all different, like different countries, all 4 of them. And so that blend, I think, is neat. And I know there are areas where there's less diversity, but the blended family is, I mean, it's amazing when you adopt out of the woodwork, everyone has an adoption story or a connection, right? And so it's so much more common than I think we thought it would be. But there are definitely the looks and the curiosities, and that I try to put the lens that they're just curious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A more positive lens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I live a very angry life, and that's just not worth
yeah, yeah. It's not worth living like
No,
this.
no.
Amelia, what was your biggest learning from this pandemic so far? Besides the story that you told that you were at home, you can be more close to him. Yeah.
Right. I can kind of be with him. I really, well, the funny one is that I learned that I like to bake, which I always thought I didn't. I like to cook, but I didn't like to bake. But I fell into the baking trap that the world fell into, and actually enjoyed it. But on a more real level, I became a lot more grateful and a lot more grounded. I had some additional life changes in addition to the pandemic, and it really gave me an opportunity to try to kind of dig in and refine me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And try to find my voice and find my footing in that space. And so through that adaptation process, through some things that I was able to do at work, through some just sort of being able to be home and absorb and sort of recenter, that's the thing that I feel like I've gotten a handle on better. And I desperately want to hold on to that and not rubber band back by accident.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. And we are talking a lot about mental health, and how do you take care of yourself, of your mental and physical health?
I wish I could say that I get up at 5 a.m. and I do this whole routine, and it includes an hour of exercise, and I can't. But sleep is important for me, so I do make sure that I get my sleep. I think that is
Crucial.
piece, right? I need sleep. I have dinner with Noah just about every night. Like I make sure I really prioritize that. Now we might watch a show together, but we're together, right? And that's a piece that I prioritize. I talk to my mom almost every day, and I keep very close with close friends and family, and have text exchange and phone conversations and go for walks. I mean, those are the pieces. That community piece and that connectivity piece is so critical for me. I've definitely delved in and out of some depressive kind of feelings and episodes over the last couple of years, like a lot of the world has. And I know that when I'm kind of getting closer to that, it's often a connectivity issue. And if I can get with people, right, it helps. And so that's a piece that I've done a lot of. I am really, I've tried, and I'm still trying to incorporate yoga and meditation into my days. And I know when I do them, I'm better than when I don't. But there are days that go by and all of a sudden it's time to go to bed. So I'm not perfect at it, but that's a part that, sort of on the physical / mental side, I have found that even though most of my time spent doing yoga is trying not to fall down, because I'm not incredibly flexible, but that experience of that, that 10, 20, 30 minutes of just kind of focusing on that activity really does help me. And so those are sort of the key pieces that I do. But I think mental health has been a huge issue as a result of the pandemic. I mean, our kids are just in crisis, and I can see it at work. I can see it in my friends as sort of this exhaustion, right, that the world has. And so I really, I think the more we can debunk the myths or debunk the stigma behind it and just talk about it, it helps, right? I mean, just a lot of empathy, a lot of compassion, a lot of really trying to understand the place that somebody else is coming from and their life experiences, and kind of fits back into the whole, DEI conversation. Understanding that helps all of our mental health. When the more I can understand what somebody else is going through, the better off I am and better off they are. I mean, it's a circular thing.
Perfect. as you talked about empathy and compassion, what are the main skills, soft skills, I would say, you think leaders should have from now on?
I think if they're not able to listen, I mean, really listen, like not check the box listen, right? And not listen with their lens and what they want to hear, but really listen. That is to me the number one skill that is something we all have to learn. And through that, the ability to accept what they're hearing and to adapt their agenda, their approach, their perspective. If they don't have that, it's I don't think it's going to work. I mean, there's little things like making sure that you're thinking about your full audience or your full customer base as you implement something new, and that you've got all those diverse voices, right? That all of that's going to be so crucial. And we're in a world that is, the way I have to kind of think about it, I mean, we're kind of in our infancy. If you look at it, I mean, the iPhone came out in 2007. I mean, we're 20 years called into this internet space, and we're infants in it, in terms of there were decades and decades, where you were still writing physical letters. I mean, you probably too. I have letters I wrote to my friends from college. I can't think of last time I wrote a letter. So if the leaders of tomorrow don't have a deep understanding and an awareness of the power of that, the connectivity, the globalness, the constant communication, the sort of always on, ability, then I think they're going to be just banging their head against the wall over and over and over. So those are sort of the soft side of it, and recognizing. I read a post this morning. A friend of mine had spoken to a young gentleman who was 8 months into his job out of college, 8 months. And he was bored, ready to look for a new job, wanted to go do what he loved. He's 8 months into his job, and it's easy for us to say, dude, you got some time. I mean, you don't even know who you are yet, right? But an entire generation has grown up with everything at their fingertips.
Yeah.
Right? It's instant. And so why shouldn't what they love be instant? And why shouldn't they be able to jump right into their passion instantly? And so how do we adapt? How do we coach? How do we change so that people don't have to spend 25 years figuring out what it is that they love? How do we do that? And leaders who can recognize that and find those opportunities and help grow new leaders are going to be so critical. And I hope that this young gentleman does really well in his life. Doesn't.
Yeah. And you brought something that I always talk to my girls. They have to learn how to deal with frustration. So it's something that as parents, we are always protecting them so that they don't get frustrated. But it's part of life.
It's part of life. Yeah. I asked Noah the other day, I was thinking about sort of, what my pandemic learnings. And I said, well, how have I changed in the last couple of years? Thinking he would say, oh, you're much more patient and calm. And he didn't. It was really interesting. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I am, because I know how I felt before, but he's not seeing that. And I think it's because he's entering this teenage years, right, where he's more easily frustrated and things are hard, and he wants more control, and he's in that space. And I'm thinking, how do I let him? Let him be frustrated, but yet not think that I'm some terrible impatient person.
Yeah.
It's a funny balance as we raise kids in this technology era.
Yeah, for sure. So we're almost done. I love those conversations that time just flies.
It flies.
But I still have my four last questions for you. The first one is, what makes you awake at night?
I sleep really well. So generally, I'm not an awake at night person. I do have good sleep. But if I have a bad conversation at work, particularly, it's something that doesn't go right, or if I know somebody's just really frustrated or really struggling and I haven't figured out how to help, or I might be part of the problem, those keep me up. And so that's the how do I communicate better? What's going on? What could I have done differently? Those are the conversations that keep me awake at night or wake me up in the night.
Great. And what is your biggest dream right now, Amelia?
It's kind of what I hinted at. We were talking about the pandemic. I don't want to lose this grounding, right? I don't. It's nice, sort of this freedom and this sort of personal experiences that I'm having, and I want that to be sustained. I think it's important, kind of back to my purpose. I don't know exactly why I'm here on earth, right? But I want to be ready for it. And the song that we started with, I'm going to know what it means to live and not just be alive, right? I sang that song every day this past summer in the morning getting ready. And it was kind of my, go-to song. And that line, what it means to live and not just be alive is so powerful.
Yes.
And so that's really my dream, right? That's what I want to know. I want to feel that, experience that, and just live and not just sort of wake up every day and go to bed every night.
How is the world that you want to live for Noah?
Oh, what world do I want to leave for Noah?
Yeah.
I want him to know that he was loved and cherished and cared for. And I want him to know that whoever he grows up to become, and he is who he is, but what sort of the adult that he becomes, is good. He has a lot of paths he could go down, and that he's got flexibility and freedom to choose that. And I want him to have that confidence and that ability to live his life and not live somebody else's life. And so if I can do that through ensuring he's loved and being authentic and, sharing my life with him, but letting him build his own at the same time, would be the world. I mean, now if I could really wave the magic wand, I'd fix some of the world problems, but I'm going to stay in my space for right now.
Yeah, if every one of us, I always say that if every one of us do what we can do, we can change the world.
We can change the world.
Yeah. And Amelia, if you didn't fear anything in your life, what would you do that you haven't done yet?
Oh my goodness. I would probably, and you've probably heard this, I mean, this is probably not that unique. I love to be on top of the water. Like I said, I love fishing. I like things about the water. I don't need to be in it. But I think it would be amazing to be able to scuba dive and go see some of the reefs and the fish and the colors and experience that. I mean, the idea of it, even just talking about it, kind of makes me get a little... But with no fear, I would go into the ocean.
Wow. Yeah, this is the second answer I get the most. The first one is jumping from an airplane or something high with highs, and then it's diving. Yeah. And I'm getting to kind of thinking that it's something that we lose control. Right. These answers always comes to a place or something that we are not in total control. That's why it scares us.
Right. That's very true.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be nice to be able to let go of that control and be that comfortable.
Yeah. So before I ask you my last question, I would love to thank you everyone that was here with us and invite you to be here with me next Friday at 6 p.m. Brazil time. I'm going to talk with Ivan Lopez. As I said, last week we didn't have gender equality. We had 2 women, but it was an exception. So this week we're going to have gender equality as promised. and be with us. And for the next 3 weeks, we're going to have more global leaders talking to us. Amelia, my last question is always the same. And you've talked about it in different angles, but it is as simple as that. What is the legacy that you want to leave? And not only for Noah. How do you want people to remind of you?
I think I would like to be, remembered as somebody who loved, right, and who was kind, and who did everything I could do every day to try to make the world a little better. Sort of what you just said. If we all do our part, we're going to change the world. And I think the world is ever evolving and ever changing. I want my part of it to be that the people who worked with me and who have relationships with me know how much they mean to me, and know how much I care about them, and that they felt that, and that they felt that that belonging and that openness and caring, kindness.
Great. Do you want to leave any final message?
I think you kind of gave me the final message, that let's all do our part, right? I mean, practice being a little vulnerable if you're not comfortable with it. Have a hard conversation if you're not comfortable with it. Ask a question that feels awkward, but put yourself, in that space. Every time my team meets, one of the things I ask them to talk about is, what did they do out of the box that week, right? What was different? What was new? What's something that they kind of stepped outside their comfort zone? And I think if we can all begin doing that just a little bit, right, then some of these massive issues that we're facing will begin to subside, and we'll begin to make progress with them.
I just loved it. I will do it with my team next Monday. I have a team meeting every Monday. This is the first question I'm going to ask them.
It's a great question. It keeps conversation going. It's a good question.
Yeah. So, Amelia, thank you so much for your time and for being such an inspiring woman, human being, leader, mother, sister, daughter, and hopefully this pandemic will be over. And as I said, when we were not online, I will visit you, and we're gonna meet in person.
That would be fabulous, Amelia. I'm so glad to have been here with you today. Thank you for what you're doing, right, and having these conversations and putting it out there and getting to know all the different people you're talking to. So it's wonderful, and I very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Send Noah my kiss.
And your daughters too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.